As with video effects and pan and crop motion paths, generated media, which include titles and which includes some of the patterns that we're going to be playing with here on the Media Generators panel, can be animated to change shape, to change size, to change color, and any other characteristics. But since generated media are technically created right in their option panels, there's a much wider range of animation options available. Let's play with a couple of these, and I'll show you how to animate them. We'll go to the checkerboard patterns, and we'll start with our default checkerboard. And even though there's no video track currently on our timeline, when I drag this down and let go, it's going to automatically create a track. I'll close this window for now. And there you can see it automatically created a track, and it placed my checkerboard on the timeline. And when I look in the preview window, I can currently see what the default settings are for this particular effect. And I've got my checkerboard up there. Let's open our Media Generators option panel. There it is. And I can now make adjustments to any one of these, or I can animate any one of these characteristics. We'll open up tile dimensions here and color, and you can see we have a number of options we can play with and a number of characteristics. We're going to animate the width and height of our tiles, and you can see that they are linked together right now. That's why the square option is checked, so they're constrained together, and we only have one adjuster for them. And I'd like to change the color also in my animation. So to do that, I click on the Animate button to the right of any one of these characteristics. It opens up our keyframe controller, which is a miniature timeline that appears at the bottom of the panel here. And that first diamond and circle represent the initial keyframe settings. In other words, they represent the current settings for the generated media that you now see in the preview panel. I'm also going to turn on animation for the black squares and turn on animation for the white squares. And I'm just going to hover my mouse here and click and drag to bring my timeline up a little bit. And now I can create my animations. So if I take the playhead here and I drag it about 2/3 of the way into the clip, I can now create my animations. So I want to change the width and height of my tiles. I can do that by dragging this. There we are. Now we've gone from many tiles on my checkerboard to just a few. And as you can see on the timeline at the bottom here in my keyframe controller, it automatically created a keyframe for the height and the width characteristics. Now we can also change our colors, and the colors are going to transition from black and white to whatever colors we select. So let's select, for instance, a blue in place of the black, and we'll select in place of the white, we'll select yellow. And you can see that it creates new keyframes for that too. So we're going to transition from many tiles on our checkerboard to few. We're also going to transition from black and white to yellow and blue. And let's see. We'll press home to make our playhead go back to the beginning of the timeline and press L to play it. And there's our animation as we go from many tiles down to few and change color in the process. We can do that with any of the patterns here. I want to take the color gradient patterns, and let's use elliptical white to black. We'll drag that down to our timeline. And let's move our playhead to the very beginning of the clip so we can see what we're doing. There it is. And we'll reopen our media generator for this clip. And right now, this is the default setting for it. And as you can see, if I drag these two numbers closer to each other, I get a much sharper edge on that circle. And the farther apart they are, the more feathered the edge. Let's make a very circular looking piece. There we go. And by selecting either one of these numbers, I can apply a color to it. So I can select 2, and I can make 2 into a nice dark green. And I can select 1 and make it into a nice yellow. There is our starting point for our animation. And now this is one of the older effects. And the older effects, instead of setting up animations for the individual characteristics, you just have a basic animate button. There it is at the bottom of the panel. I'm going to click on it. And when I do, I get my keyframe controller timeline. I'll drag that up here so it's a little closer. And this will take care of animating all of the characteristics at once. So there's just a one-click option here. We'll put the playhead about halfway through the clip, and then I'll make some changes. For one thing, I want to narrow that ellipse into a very narrow ellipse. I want to change the interior color to maybe white, and my background color I'll change to a dark blue. And now the program will create the animation between those initial settings and the current keyframe, which represents our current settings. Let's close that and we'll see. Put the playhead back to the beginning of the clip, and let's play our animation by pressing L. There it is, changing shape, changing color. Now, some of these animations you can create with these patterns are very, very cool. I'll show you one more, and then we'll take a look at titles. Noise texture. I'm going to drag the marble noise texture down. This, of course, looks like a piece of marble. And now let me move the playhead to right over the clip so we can see what we're doing in the preview window. Reopen my media generator panel. And this is one of the newer effects. So again, I can adjust the individual characteristics. And the characteristic I'm most interested in changing is under noise parameters. It is the grain. That's the one I want to animate, the grain, amplitude, and fall off. So if I select that to animate, you can see that the current settings are represented by these keyframes right here. If I wanted to update those, I would, of course, just move my playhead on top of them and make whatever changes I wanted. But that's going to be my starting point. And then I'll move my playhead way toward the end of the clip here. And I'm going to turn on my animation here for grain amplitude. I'm going to raise that amplitude a lot. Cool pattern, huh? And now the program is going to create the animation between the initial settings, the initial keyframe, and this current view. Let's move the playhead to the beginning of the clip and then press the L button. Now that's very cool. You can create some very, very cool patterns. We could be changing color right now. We could be changing a lot of the characteristics and get some very cool psychedelic stuff going there. You can also create animations with your titles. Now I know titles come with some prepackaged animations, but you can also create some on your own. So we'll take titles and text. I'm just going to drag a generic title onto my timeline, put my playhead over it, and I'm going to select the text here. And naturally, I could change any one of these characteristics. And as you can see, they all have little clocks next to them. Even if I open up some of these more advanced ones, you see they have clocks on them too. So any one of these characteristics can be animated. And I'm going to animate some simple things here. We're going to animate, for instance, the text color. And I'm going to animate its location. I'm also going to animate its scale or its size. And I want to set the initial settings for this particular title such that my scale is much smaller. So I can drag that down. I can drag right on the preview panel to where I like the initial position for the text right there. And white is fine for my text color right now. Now I'll move the keyframe controller playhead to about 3/4 of the way through the clip. And now I can change those characteristics. Any characteristics that I have selected to animate, I can change. So I can increase my scale. I can change the position. I can change the color of the text if the text is selected. Make sure it's selected in there or this won't work. And I can change it to, using the hue selector, I can get down here to a nice green. And naturally, I'm not limited to just 2 keyframes. If I'd like, I can move my playhead in between these, and I can change the position again. You see, I automatically get a keyframe for its position. I can even change the color again if I want. We can go for yet another color. So it's now going to transition from white to this sort of brown to green, and we've created a simple animation. And any one of the characteristics that are listed on an option panel, you can create the animation for. Let's take a look at what that looks like. And I'll play it by pressing the L button. And there it is, changing size, changing shape, changing position, changing color. Very, very nice. When you use keyframes on generated media files, including text and titles, you can create a wide variety of shapes, objects, and text animations. You can control how these objects or text blocks move, or you can even make them change color, outline, shape, whatever over the course of your event clip. And because this type of media doesn't really exist until you create it on your timeline, in some ways, there are even more ways to create visual effects and animations with your generated media than with any other media clips.